Nanda. I'm here in Scotland, in the city of Edinburgh, and I'm here on a short trip, and I love the city so much that I thought that our viewers should get a sense, should get a feel of what these different cities look like. And I think this is one of the best cities that I visited ever. But ironically enough, I'm not at the most lively spot of the city. I'm actually at a graveyard. This is called the Greyfriars Kirkyard. So kirkyard in the language here means churchyard. This is old churches in Britain, in Scotland, in Ireland would have graveyards within their compounds, and this is a very old graveyard. This was actually made after the older graveyard was filled with bodies, and then this one was commissioned. But before we talk about the graveyard, I want to talk about what the city signifies for me and what sense of the city I received in these 2-3 days of walking around here. I think to me Edinburgh particularly, and I think Scottish culture in general, has a very strong sense of fighting back. There is a strong culture of protest. There's a history of solidarity and standing up with people from across the world who have faced oppression at the hands of other forces, of external forces. As you walk across the streets of Edinburgh, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen flags in support of Palestine. I've seen installations for political prisoners of other countries, and the reason I've started this episode here at the graveyard is not just because of the graveyard itself, but I want to show you something. It's a marker of a tragedy that happened in India years ago, and it's something that you wouldn't really expect to see at a graveyard in Scotland, in Edinburgh. And it is this plaque which has been installed here in remembrance of the Bhopal gas tragedy, in remembrance of the thousands killed by the Union Carbide gas disaster in Bhopal, India on 3rd December 1984. Your friends in Scotland have not forgotten you. Never think you stand alone. You wouldn't really expect somebody to have erected this here. When we saw this, when this was pointed out to me by a friend, I was immediately taken to all those thousands of kilometers away back home suddenly, and reminded of the fact that even today victims of the Bhopal gas tragedy have to fight for the right compensation, for the justice that was never really delivered to them. And this is what I think exemplifies the city of Edinburgh, because it chooses. There are some people, at least in this city, who choose to stand with those who were supposed to be forgotten. And the idea of the Greyfriars Kirkyard is that even though you see all these tombstones which are marked, but there are many more, there are hundreds, probably thousands of unmarked graves. These are graves of people who couldn't afford a tombstone. So the idea that the thousands of the Union Carbide gas disaster also remained unnamed, unacknowledged, unhonored, find a place here. So this is that sort of a place. This is that kind of a city where people, the oppressed people, and also the people who fight back, find a place. Okay, so now we are inside the graveyard, the kirkyard as it's called, and what you see behind me are actually just rows of graves all along, but these are the graves that are marked with a tombstone. And what happened in those times is that those people who could afford to have these stones erected got them erected on their own graves, but there are a lot of unmarked graves across this graveyard. Most of these graves are marked as being graves of merchants, as graves of surgeons, priests. There are authors, there are poets, there are architects, provosts of the town. There are graves that were gifted to members of the city councils, families, as acts. They were actually acts were passed in the city and tombs were gifted, as you can see on your screen now. But the idea that even though this is a graveyard, this place is just, it's bustling with activity, it's bustling with life, it's become a tourist spot of its own, even though one would think that this is a place you wouldn't go to. Now what you see here this is a very interesting piece of history about this place. These graves were covered. They were covered to protect the graves from grave robbers, and that is a slightly sinister history of the graves, of the graveyard. This place is very close to the Edinburgh anatomy school, the medical school, sorry. And in those times, for students to be able to clear their exams, they had to perform anatomical studies as part of the final exam. And bodies were not easily found in Edinburgh, because the idea within the Christian religious setup was that the body had to be placed in the grave as it was intact. It shouldn't have been touched. So it was difficult to conduct anatomical studies. So what would happen is a culture, a whole market of grave snatching and grave robbery picked up in Edinburgh, and there were all these gangs of grave robbers who would go around, who would wait for families to bury their dead, and they would come back and take up the bodies and take them to the medical school. So as a preventive measure, some of these graves were then covered up. And what you also see is that a lot of these graves were also encased in almost these like shrine looking structures where there are doors and you can't really go in, and these doors are very old, they're very rusty. I don't know how old the doors are. So while even though you were burying the dead, there was this anxiety that they would not really rest. And obviously this was in response to the advancements that were happening in the medical school in Edinburgh. The irony is that even here there are graves of surgeons, there are graves of professors of the anatomy school, and in the middle of all of this, the small place is developing its own history, its own small little place within the larger history of Edinburgh, which is this very lively, very very feisty city. But the graveyard, as the notice board right at the entrance says, is a reminder of memento mori, the idea that death awaits you. So now we are at the Scott Memorial. This is right in the middle of Edinburgh. This is called the Princess Street. And the person you see behind me, the statue in white marble, I think it is the poet, the writer Walter Scott, who was a 18th century, 19th century writer who is integral to the idea of Scottish literature and Scottish identity. This is one of the largest monuments to a writer anywhere in the world. And I was reading up a little about it. Apparently when the monument was built, a lot of the workers in its construction who were involved in its construction also passed away, and it was commissioned and the construction went on for 2 years, and it's a unique place. It's a unique monument within Edinburgh because it's made in the Gothic style, which is very unusual given the other kinds of buildings that are here in Edinburgh. But in everything that you see here, there is a strong assertion of Scottish identity, and it doesn't come at the cost of of denigrating other cultures. A lot of it is very strongly in opposition to the British legacy, to the English oppression that the Scottish people have faced over centuries. But they also take pride and they consider it their honor that they've fought against British expansion and British assertion over their history. So even Walter Scott, for example, was somebody who was very instrumental in preserving, in recording, in writing about Scottish customs and in practices that the people had almost forgotten after the Dress Act had been imposed on the people here, when wearing Scottish clothes was outlawed. There was high taxes on whiskey, which is part of the eating and drinking culture here. Bagpipes, which I don't know if you can hear in the background, but there are bagpipes playing near me. Bagpipes were banned. It's a city which is not just talking about protest at the current time, but it's a city marked in a history of protest and in a history of self-assertion and speaking back to powers that try to curtail your identity. And I think this sense of welcome, this sense of safety and this sense of inclusivity doesn't just happen in a city. It happens because the city wants that. I think it happens because the people of a city want that to be the nature, the character of the city. And that is the reason, for example, why it's close to midnight right now and I'm walking alone on the streets of Edinburgh. And it's not as if there isn't crime here, it isn't as if there aren't problems in this city, but still somehow there is a sense of security that the city gives you, and it comes because of the people. It comes because the people make you feel welcome. There are so many people along the way who'll just smile at you as you pass by, or when you go and just ask them for the way. They're not rude to you. They're sweet, they're nice. And this sense of safety doesn't come because of 1,000 CCTVs are there in a city or not. I don't even know if there are any where I am standing right now, but it comes because when I'm walking around here at night, there are many other people who are also walking along. There are women who are walking alone. There are people who are walking around in groups. It's not as if I am stranded. Buses are still running. I can still get home if I want to. And bus drivers, for instance, and shop owners, shopkeepers are very friendly. They're very attentive to the fact that you might be in distress. So it's just generally a culture of being attentive to what people may need, what a woman may need if she is in distress. And I think it's something that we in our cities lack. For instance, why can't I do this at night in Delhi? And when you see a city at night, you see a different side of it. But for many of us, that is just an experience that we just don't get, because we don't feel safe at night. There can be many people here who may say, okay, why do you want to be alone on the streets at night? But the point is, why not? Why should people not feel safe to be on the streets of the same city at night, where they walk alone, walk in groups in the day? The colors behind me, coincidentally, are the colors of the Palestinian flag. There's the red, the green, the white, and then again the green of the star. These are very old towers, and we are standing here inside the railway station, the Edinburgh Waverley railway station, and this was just something that I happened to just notice, because the city is filled with flags of Palestine. And as I talked about earlier, this is a city of solidarity, and what you see now are flags, small flags which have the names of political prisoners who have been in prisons in Belarus since 2020. And this installation was just randomly set up at a student center in Summer Hall. And I think the Scottish history of fighting against colonialism, against political oppression, is marked across the city in many different ways. So the time in my watch is around 5:21, 5:22, but I'm standing outside the Balmoral Hotel and there's a clock tower here, and that says the time is around 5:26 p.m. And there's a very interesting story to this as well. And Edinburgh is a town of stories, like all cities are, like Delhi is, like Mumbai is, like Jaipur is, like any other city. But this clock tower particularly has a reason why it doesn't tell you the right time. This clock is situated right at the top of the railway station. So the idea is, in old times, that when people would come running to the railway station from afar, they would see the time at the clock and they would realize that they were running late by 3 or 4 minutes. So they would, start running to catch their train, and so they would be in time. But it's modern times now, everybody has a phone and people know that they're on time. But still, this is a town that likes to preserve its tradition, its histories. And even today, the clock here at Balmoral tells you the time 3 minutes fast. But there is just one day, the New Year's Day, Hogmanay, when the clock tells you the right time. When the clock tells you the right time, and that is just the one day of the year. In 2020, which was COVID year, that year they did not set the clock on the right time. And that year, 2020, the year of COVID, was as a result 4 minutes shorter in Edinburgh. So that is how history is interacting with the present all the time, and that is what I feel really exemplifies so many of these towns and cities here in the UK. You go to the graveyard, and that is the site where Frankenstein, where Mary Shelley gets her inspiration for Frankenstein, where J.K. Rowling walks about in the graves, amongst the graves, and finds a grave called Tom Riddle and makes the main villain of the book series, names it after Tom Riddle. This is the city where R.L. Stevenson writes a novel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it becomes an idea of the split personality that Edinburgh began to develop in the 18th, 19th centuries, where a new town developed, and there was this old town that you see here on your screen now. You see Arthur's Seat there, which is again a historical site which I don't know the significance of, but this is what you see is the view of the old city of Edinburgh. And towards my right, where I'm not taking you, is the new town. So this city develops in a very split way. The two parts of the town have different personalities, and that begins to show up in their literature, in their customs, in their preservation. But this tussle between the new and the old has, I think, been beautifully preserved. Here you see buildings that were demolished by fires but were then built again in the same way, in an attempt to keep the architectural identity of the town intact. So it's a city of contradictions. It's a city of intermingling of many cultures. It's a city of protest. It's a city of students, of immigrant culture, and it's a very welcoming city. And I'd like to thank my colleague Kanav for taking me around the city and helping me make this show for you. Until then, till next time, this is Vrinda.